Welcome to Doyle. My name is Angelo Madrigale. I'm the director of the paintings department, and today we're going to discuss a fantastic work by Adolph Gottlieb, a heavy matter from 1965, which is featured in our October 6th 20th Century Abstraction sale. Adolph Gottlieb was born and raised in New York. By the age of 17, he had dropped out of high school. He was studying at the Art Students League, and he took a merchant ship to Europe, where he spent several months in Paris and visited the Louvre every day. Upon returning to New York, he was exhibiting work, and by the mid-20s, he had already began lifelong relationships with peer artists like Mark Rothko and Barnett Newman and Milton Avery. About 1937, Gottlieb decides to travel to Arizona and live in the desert for roughly a year. During that time, he discovers transcendental thought and automatic writing and things that the surrealists were speaking to. He was interested in Carl Jung, who was talking about the duality of man, and all of this permeated into his work. Gottlieb was also looking at mythology and ancient cultures, and from this he was building a new series of work, his first abstract series, which was the Pictogram series. When Gottlieb returned to New York with the paintings he had created during his time in Arizona, even his friends and peers said the works were too abstract. But Gottlieb was not going to be deterred. He was making new, fantastic abstract art. In 1950, the Metropolitan Museum of Art decided that they were going to set up a new exhibition about American art called American Painting Today. That would be a juried exhibition. Gottlieb and a group of artists he was very close with, all who became the Abstract Expressionists, detested the idea of this, and they strongly disliked the judges that were involved in choosing this art and defining what would be American art. They knew of one such critic who even said in public that all avant-garde art is inhuman. That was his word. And what they chose to do was to create a letter, which Gottlieb wrote, and that letter explained their extreme displeasure with the choices that they had made, that they had no bearing on what was really happening in the art world, and that this group of artists would not participate. That letter was signed by 18 artists who would become known as the Irascibles. Keep in mind, new art, avant-garde art, before Gottlieb and the Irascibles comes from Europe. They themselves are looking at the surrealists, they're looking at Picasso and Kandinsky, and that's all European. So they wanted to define what American art was, and they would not be stopped. The group that signed the letter included Barnett Newman, Mark Rothko, de Kooning, Pollock, Motherwell, Hedda Stern, a number of artists, some of the great artists in New York at that time. And what happened was, not only did they send this letter to the Met, but Barnett Newman, having worked in the press at one point in his life, knew some people, knew a few tricks, and he got this letter published on the front page of the New York Times. So it got a lot of attention there, and at that point, Life magazine stepped in. Life magazine was really the media center at the time, more so than television and movies, really. To be in Life magazine would be the top of the mountain. So when Life magazine approached these artists, their intention was to do a story that would show photos of the artists holding their work on the steps of the Met. And Gottlieb refused. He was concerned that the photo would make it look as if the artist had been rejected, and he felt it would denigrate what they were doing. Important note, the Irascibles was a name given by the press, meaning that these artists were, in their opinion, angry and upset and irritated. So it was a purposefully insulting name to be given to these artists, but they were known as the Irascibles. They're forward, this group of AbX artists. And that photo, that important key photo in Life magazine, Irving Sandler, the art historian, said that image is the moment we see the triumph of American painting. Jumping ahead to 1957, Gottlieb starts the third and final series of paintings he would create, his burst paintings, of which a heavy matter is one of them. In 1957, he paints Blast 1, which is in the permanent collection of MoMA here in New York. And what's important about these works is that, unlike his peers, Gottlieb is playing with negative space. He's considered one of the first color field artists. And there is a balance here. Going back to what we were talking about with Jungianism and the duality of man, you see this serene image of this burst, and then this cluster of more gestural, busy brushstrokes. And they are at war with each other. It's yin and yang. They're in balance with each other. They barely touch here, the black feeding into the red. You even have some touches of blue, which are unusual but really special. You have these two forces working against each other here, but they're balanced. Keep in mind, there is no narrative here. It's emotion and it's color. In the Irascible's letter, Gottlieb says, "We are for flat forms because they destroy illusion and reveal truth." And we see that here in a heavy matter. Gottlieb says later, "To my mind, certain so-called abstraction is not abstraction at all. On the contrary, it is the realism of our time." This work will be on view as part of our 20th Century Abstraction sale. The auction is October 6th, and you can see more at Doyle.com.